Hi, my name is Marky, and I'm going to talk to you today here at Yada Yada Talks about being ghosted, grilled, and underpaid in the job market. Today's job market is not what the market used to be. It is incredibly exhausting, just from the start of the process. So, I'm going to talk about that today. And then I want you guys to give me your thoughts and also share some of your experiences that you've gone through the job search process. So, the first thing I want to start with today is talking about the application process. So, if you're like the average job candidate right now, you probably put over hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. I myself, as an HR professional, have put in over five or 600 applications since I got laid off back in April of this year. So, one of the things that I've noticed that not my just myself, but everyone in general has been frustrated with is how long these applications are. So they'll tell you to upload your resume only for you to then have to put in your employment history. The thing is if you've already asked me for my resume, and you have that information, why do I then need to give you my employment history when it's all put together cohesively in resume format? It's like it's redundant. And these applications sometimes they go on for at least 30 to 60 minutes, whereas it shouldn't take that long. You have to think if a person is putting in, I would say, even on average, 5 to 10 applications a day, and it's taking anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes to do an application, they're spending a majority of their day doing applications. And looking for a job is a job. It's very frustrating. And then it just it's demoralizing, and I think that my frustration is a frustration that a lot of job candidates are experiencing, and I'm hearing about that in my network as well. The average time to do an application for the average person takes anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, and it's like, okay, so if we figured out a way to make applications for credit cards 60 seconds, why can't we do the same for a job application? Now, there are a few employers such as Netflix where you just upload your resume and maybe answer a couple of questions, and your application process is under 60 seconds. But other employers, like for an example, Target, Macy's, Estee Lauder, Walmart, you will fill out an application that takes over 30 minutes. Then they send you an assessment only for your application to either get auto declined, or if it doesn't get a decline, it goes through to the application abyss, never to be found or responded to ever again. And it's very hurtful, and it hurts people when they put in so much effort just to be either auto rejected or put in that black abyss of application. So one thing that should change is if you're going to utilize applicant tracking systems to streamline your process for reviewing candidates, then grant that same courtesy to the candidate. Allow the process to apply to be less than that 30 or 60 minutes. And even coming from like the assessments, a lot of times those assessments don't really tell you what that person can do. Or if it's something that's behavioral, most times people could lie. Like I've seen people lie. I've even seen people have somebody else take their assessment. So it's what are they really testing? You know, if you're going to do that, maybe do that after you've actually interviewed that person to see if they're a good fit, because that is a lot of time to invest into a job search when you're not going to get a response back or you're going to get an auto decline. So, I mean, there has to be some changes that need to be made. The next thing is the recruiter ghosting. And this also ties in with the application process. Um, okay, if you say, hey, you make it through and you actually get a recruiter to call you back, They'll ask you some questions. They'll tell you a little bit about the job. A lot of times they're not transparent about the compensation, when in reality, that will make a person actually apply. Like there are studies that show that 30 you will get 30% more applicants to apply when there is pay transparency. And most companies or states require it, which it should be required everywhere because it takes away the disparity when it comes to women of color or just women in general and other minorities. If you have nothing to hide, show that. And then when you we're interviewing someone, when they do get to that recruiting process, be honest about what the pay is so you're not wasting their time. So that's another thing that's kind of in between that uh, application and the recruiter. Again, if you can list me everything that the job does, what more is it going to be to list what the compensation is? It's not just about the pay. It's just do the right thing. Like at least people know that when they're applying what they're getting themselves into. But back to the recruiters, they'll call you, oh, yeah, we're excited. We'll follow up with you for next steps. Never to hear from them again. Never to hear from them again. And in this climate right now, 61% of candidates have said that they've been ghosted. 66% of women of color have said that they've been ghosted by recruiters. And overall, 67% of people or candidates that have applied through staffing agencies have been ghosted. So this has all gone up at least 9% in the last year. Like it was like we're getting paid back for when people were opting to stay home because they made more money on unemployment than actually working. And it's like now the payback is, well, now there's far jobs, there's massive layoffs. So if I call you back, I call you back. If I don't, I don't. But it's just that really beats the average candidate down who is really truly looking for work. And it just looks bad on the company. And I myself went through a situation like that where I turned in an application for an HR manager role. I hear back from the recruiter right away. Then she follows up and say, "Hey, we want to meet with you for a second round interview with the hiring manager." I meet with the hiring manager, and it seemed to go well. And then I hear nothing, not a decline, not any feedback, just simply nothing, just absolutely nothing. And just imagine how many people they've done that to. And I think that if you're overwhelmed with the amount of candidates, at that point, it's okay to send an auto response like, hey, we decided to go with someone else. But to just go ghost on them after they spent hours of their time to interview with you and turn the application, at least give them some feedback. I've also have another experience where I applied for a business partner role and I ended up meeting with the recruiter. Once I talked to her, I found out that the salary band was half of what I made, but they were interviewing for a role that paid comparable to what I was already making. It was a similar role and it was for a regional HR business partner or manager. And that's what I did in my previous role over multi sites. And this role was going to be similar, but it was more local. It wasn't a lot of out of state, but just more mainly like 15 sites here. Well, I go through the process, I interview well, she moves me on, and then I go on site. And for like my second round, I meet with the HR director who was currently in that role, who was looking to retire in the next few years. And she was like, "Hey, I think you'll be a great fit just based off of your experience and everything. I think you'll fit right in. And I think that you can handle this job well. I'm going to move you on to the next round." And she told me that right then and there. And I spent hours with her that day, even walking through to the site. And she also stated that one of my colleagues that work with me had gave her great feedback for me, who was my operations team, and she told her that I was a great HR business partner. Go through After I go through that, I go through three more rounds of interviews, and one was with the director's manager. So That day I had 3 interviews, and the interview process was supposed to be about 2 hours, but it ended up being about 3.5, which you would think would be a good thing. So the issue comes with, 1, I get there, I'm greeted well. They actually allowed me to interview early because I got there about 30 minutes early. But when it started to go downhill was when I meet with the HR director's manager, and she offers to do the interview in her office and said, "Well, I want to leave the door open because my office is a little warm." Now, I understand that, but me being the candidate, that's not a good feeling when you leave the door open and then there's at least 30 plus people sitting in a lobby that are able to hear my interview. And it's also not a good feeling when the other people I interviewed with actually either interviewed me in their office with the door closed, or they took me to a meeting room or conference room, which that was something she could have did as a courtesy if she felt like her office was too warm. But she was asking me questions where the answers were on my resume, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I've done that before." Like, "Oh, have you led a team?" "Yes, I've done that. I did this, I did that." And I expressed that. I had did all of those things, but it just seemed like she already had her mind made up. Went through to the next ones, they all went well. One of the parties didn't even ask me anything about me or about the role. He was really just talking about how the executive of our executive, our operations team had applied and they didn't have anything for her. And I was a little puzzled by that, but I went through, asked my questions, tried to bring the conversation back to while I was there and why I was a good fit. And then I went through to the next one, and again, all stated that they felt like I would be a great addition to the team. So I was told that this was on a Friday, that by that Wednesday, I would hear something back. So what I ended up doing was I sent an email thanking them all for their time and also reiterating a lot of those issues that they said that they had and how I could utilize my skills to solve those issues. I get a response back from the recruiter, and she said, "Okay, thank you so much. We'll be getting back with you no later than Wednesday." Never heard anything back. But when she finally got with me on that Friday, she sent me an email at the end of the day on Friday. And after I had invested so much time, she just said, "Hey, we decided we wanted someone more senior." So you didn't know that in round one. You didn't know that in round two. You didn't know that in round three. It took you 6 rounds to decide that I was not senior enough. That was the only feedback. I thanked her for her time, and I didn't hear anything back, but I thought that if that was the case and I invested at least 10 hours, in those 6 rounds of interviews, you couldn't pick up the phone and call me and tell me that? Or why couldn't you have made this process a lot shorter for someone? Had I known that the interview process was going to be 6 rounds of interviews, I would have turned it down because anytime you're using that many interviews to look for candidate, you're looking for a unicorn. You're being too picky. And a lot of these places need to stop putting candidates through the ringer. It is demoralizing, it's exhausting. And then for you to not even really give them any feedback, it doesn't help them because there could have been something that maybe I didn't explain right, or there could have been something that may have been a red flag that you could have gave me feedback that could help me in the next round. But again, 6 rounds of interviews, it's not well. And even that's not even the worst of it. I mean, I've been on an interview where the person came in with an attitude. It seemed like they didn't want to hire me, just based off of as soon as they turned the camera on. And she had said that they had this role open for 12 months after she got promoted. And she said she's had 3 recs open for the same role and haven't found anyone. I don't think the problem is the candidate. I think the problem is you. And it's like no one is going to be the perfect candidate, and most positions can be taught. But she just seemed like she was annoyed, and I thanked her again for her time. Didn't hear anything back, just went to the abyss. And this is something that, again, I've noticing that a lot of people are experiencing in this job search. And again, went through for an interview for another position, went through 3 rounds, did not hear anything after that third round, and you're just left in that abyss. Like I said, it's the long applications, the 6 plus or anything over 3 rounds of interviews is really too much, especially if it's not for C-suite role. So it's really demoralizing, and it really breaks a lot of people down. And I've seen so many people on LinkedIn, so many people in my networks just talking about like how they just don't know they're going to make it, or how they just don't even want to continue on because of what's happening in this market. It really, really needs to stop. It's just there's an interview overload, application overload, lack of transparency. It just has really hurt the candidate. And I just feel like at some point in time things need to change. And then in addition to the problems, I've even been through interviews where um, the person has asked me questions that if you're in HR, you know they're illegal. Anything that's a protected class, whether it's your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, all should not be asked. And there's many more to that. But I had someone ask me, "Hey, how old are you?" Because I don't want anybody older, or I don't want anybody younger. I had someone ask me if I was pregnant. You cannot ask that in an interview. That is against the law. And that lets me know that you need an in-house HR, or you're not compliant, because that is not something that you should be asking someone. And it's just it was crazy. I ended up asking a person like, "Why did you ask me my age?" "Oh, I didn't want anybody younger." It it doesn't matter. My experience should speak for what it is, regardless if I'm 25, 45, 55. Age discrimination should not be a thing. But it is. And there is a company that is actually, I'll have to do some more, I'll have to maybe add this in later, but with these companies using ATS, there is a lawsuit going on right now where the applicant tracking systems have been kicking candidates out that are 40 plus years of age, which is against the law. So there's a lot of things that are going against people. Like I said, I'm all about streamlining the process, but if you're going to use it, it still needs to have a human touch, and you have to make sure it's being compliant. You have to. And then my thing is, it's just when it comes to looking for jobs, things that we need to know are clear timelines. We need to know the interview caps. We need to know the the pay. We need to know what, like, anything that's going maybe a surprise to that person. Like, you need to have it to where the candidate's time is being respectful, just like you want someone to respect your time. So I thank you today for taking time to listen to me, Marky, at Yada Yada Talks. Please comment below and share some of your stories of how you experience ghosting, lack of pay transparency, long application processes, illegal questions. Share them below or stitch this video. I love to hear back from you. And again, thank you today for listening to Marky at Yada Yada Talks.